Welcome. Look, we've all tapped a card and seen that approved message pop up in seconds. But what actually happens in that blink of an eye? In this explainer, we're diving deep into the expert material to unpack that entire journey. For you as a PCI professional, this isn't just trivia. Understanding this flow is everything. It's about knowing exactly where this sensitive data is, how it's flying across the globe, and, most importantly, where the bad guys are trying to snatch it. So let's get into it.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start by meeting the key players in any transaction. Then, we'll follow the high-speed race of an authorization request. We'll see what the cardholder's bank is looking for before it gives the thumbs up. After that, we'll get into what happens at the end of the day with batching and clearing, and then the final settlement when the money actually moves. And finally, we'll tie it all together.
Okay, first things first. Before we can follow the data, we've got to know who's handling it. You can think of these as the 5 main characters in our story. Each one has a very specific job, and for us, a very specific relationship with that precious cardholder data. Getting these roles straight is, and I mean this, absolutely foundational to understanding PCI DSS.
So, our story always starts right here, with the cardholder. Now, obviously, your customer isn't the one who needs to be PCI compliant, but they are the entire reason we're here. They hold the data we're sworn to protect. When they decide to buy something, they kick off this entire complex process. Everything we do from a PCI standpoint is about protecting their primary account number, the PAN, and all that other sensitive authentication data, or SAD.
Next up, the merchant. For us PCI pros, this is usually ground zero. The merchant's environment, their cash registers, their website, their back office servers, that whole shebang makes up what we call the cardholder data environment, or CDE. And it's really important to remember that not all merchants are created equal in the eyes of PCI. Depending on how many transactions they process, they can be level 1, 2, 3, or 4, and each level has its own set of rules to follow.
Now, a merchant can't just plug a card reader into the wall and start accepting payments. They need a partner, a sponsor, and that's the acquirer. You can just think of them as the merchant's bank. They give the merchant the account and the tech to get paid. But here's the crucial part. The acquirer takes on a ton of financial risk. If there's a breach, they're on the hook for fines. So you better believe they are very, very motivated to make sure their merchants are following the PCI rules.
On the flip side of the coin, we have the issuer. This is the cardholder's bank. They're the ones who actually issued the piece of plastic in the first place. You can think of them as the ultimate gatekeepers of the transaction. They hold the money, they approve or deny the purchase, and they carry most of the risk if a transaction turns out to be fraudulent. That's exactly why they have some seriously sophisticated security checks, which we're going to see in just a bit.
And finally, the glue that holds this whole system together, the payment brand. We're talking about the big names here: Visa, MasterCard, Amex. They don't actually issue cards or lend money. Instead, they're like the air traffic controllers of the payment world. They run the massive, secure networks that let all these different banks talk to each other. And most importantly, they write the rule book. In fact, these are the companies that founded the PCI Security Standards Council. Yep, the very group that writes the standards you're studying.
All right, we've met the players. Now it's time to see them in action. We're diving into the authorization process. This is a crazy fast, high-stakes relay race of data that happens in the 2 or 3 seconds between when you tap your card and that little approved message pops up.
So the race starts the second that card gets near the terminal. Instantly, the point-of-sale device bundles up a little data package. It's got the card number, the expiration date, how much you're spending, and encrypts it. Then, whoosh, it sends it to the acquirer. The acquirer takes one look and forwards it to the payment brand. The brand then acts like a super smart post office. It reads the address on the data and routes it to the exact right issuer, all in a matter of milliseconds.
Of course, this isn't just flying through the open internet. It's all happening inside a secure, encrypted connection. We're talking about strong protocols like TLS, Transport Layer Security. You can picture it like an armored car, creating a protected tunnel from the store all the way to the acquirer's system. This makes sure that even if someone were listening in, all they'd get is gibberish. And this secure transmission, it's a non-negotiable part of PCI DSS, specifically Requirement 4.1.
I love how the expert material puts this. They're like detectives. So what clues they're looking for? It's all in what's called the track data. This is a holdover from the old magnetic stripe days. Track 2 data is the most common, and it just has the card number and expiration date. What's wild is that even with modern chip cards, the same data format is often packed inside the authorization message. And you have to know, this data is incredibly sensitive and a huge target for criminals using card skimmers.
So, how does the payment brand know exactly where to send this request so fast? It's actually brilliantly simple. It's all in the first few digits of your card number. This is called the Bank Identification Number, or BIN. You can think of it like a zip code for your card. It tells the network which bank issued it. The rest of the numbers are your specific account, and that very last digit is just a little checksum to make sure the number wasn't typed in wrong. It's this structure that makes the whole high-speed system possible.
Okay, that data package has rocketed across the network and has just landed on the issuer's doorstep. This is it, the moment of truth. The cardholder's bank now has just a fraction of a second to run a whole series of checks and decide, is this transaction a go or no-go?
So what's on this lightning-fast checklist? Well, first, is this even a real account? Is it active, or has it been reported lost or stolen? Check. Next, the obvious one. Does the person have enough money or credit available? Check. If it's an online purchase, it'll run an address verification or AVS check to see if the billing address matches what's on file. And of course, it validates those security codes. For an online buy, it's that 3 or 4-digit CVV2 code. For a chip card, it's an even fancier dynamic code that's unique for every single transaction. It's a seriously powerful, multi-layered defense against fraud.
Based on those checks, the issuer sends back a response. And it's not just a simple yes or no, it's a specific code. A 00 is the all clear, approved, but a 51 means insufficient funds. An 05 is a more generic do not honor. That code, plus a unique authorization number if it's approved, gets fired back along the very same path it came, from the issuer to the brand to the acquirer, and finally, bam, it hits the screen at the store. Now here is a super important detail that a lot of people get wrong. When that approved message comes through, the money hasn't actually moved anywhere, not a single cent. What the issuer does is place a temporary hold on the funds. It's like putting a sticky note on that amount in your account, saying, reserved for this merchant. This guarantees the money will be there later. And from our PCI perspective, that authorization code the merchant just received is now data they have to protect within their CDE.
All right, the real-time race is over. The customer is happy, they've got their stuff and their receipts, and they're walking out the door. But for the merchant and the banks, the day's work is really just getting started. Now we move into the back-office processes that happen at the end of the day.
So at the end of the day, the merchant does something called batching out. Think about it. It would be crazy inefficient to send every single transaction off for payment one by one. It'd be like driving to the post office for every single letter you write. Instead, the POS system gathers up all of the day's approved sales, bundles them all together into one big electronic file, and gets it ready for a single, efficient delivery. That one big batch file is then securely sent from the merchant over to their acquirer. This is the merchant officially saying, okay, I held up my end of the bargain for all these sales, it's time to get paid. And that one single action kicks off the next major phase for hundreds or even thousands of transactions all at once.
This phase is called clearing, and it's a totally different beast from the real-time authorization we saw earlier. This is an overnight process. The acquirer takes that huge batch file and sends it to the payment brand. The brand systems then act like a massive sorting facility, breaking the batch apart and sending all the individual transaction details out to all the different issuing banks involved. It's basically telling each bank, okay, you owe this amount for these transactions.
Okay, everybody, lean in for a second. This next point is huge for your PCI CIP exam. The expert material specifically calls this out, so you're going to want to remember this. It's all about perspective and knowing where our job as PCI professionals really ends.
And there it is, straight from the expert material. For you, for the exam, for your role in the real world. Clearing is the final step in the process, not settlement. I know it sounds a little weird, but let's talk about exactly why that is. The reason is actually pretty simple. The whole point of PCI DSS is to protect cardholder data. The clearing process is the very last step where that sensitive transaction data is being actively exchanged and reconciled between the banks. Everything that happens after this point is just about moving money around. Your job is to follow the data, and the data's journey officially ends right here, at the end of clearing. So we know that from a PCI point of view, our work is done. But just so you have the full 360-degree view of how this all works, let's follow the money to its final destination. Let's talk about settlement. This part usually takes about 24 to 48 hours.
The issuer takes the money from the cardholder's account and sends it through the payment brand's network over to the acquirer. Now, along the way, everyone takes a tiny little piece of the pie. These are the fees. The biggest one is the interchange fee, which the issuer gets for taking on the risk. After all the fees are taken out, the final net amount is what gets deposited into the merchant's bank account.
And this is what brings the whole thing full circle. The merchant has their money, and the process finally ends for the cardholder when they get their monthly statement in the mail or online. They see the charge, they pay their bill, and their part of this one specific transaction is officially complete.
Putting it side by side like this makes the difference crystal clear. Clearing is all about reconciling the data. Settlement is about transferring the funds. Clearing moves transaction data, settlement moves actual money. For you as a PCI professional, your world, your focus, your primary concern is right there in that left-hand column. It's all about the data.
Okay, we have followed a single payment from the customer's hand all the way to the merchant's bank account. So let's zoom out and recap the whole journey one last time, just to make sure these key concepts are really locked in. Here it is, the 6 stages of life for a credit card transaction. You can really think about it in 2 halves. The first 3 steps, presentation, authorization, authentication, that's the real-time, in-the-store part of the journey. The last 3 steps, batching, clearing, settlement, that's all the back-office stuff that happens later to sort out the data and move the money. Knowing this flow is absolutely key to protecting data at every single point along the way.
And I think that's the main takeaway here. To a customer, it's just a simple 2-second tap. But for us, we know the incredible complexity that's hidden just beneath the surface. It's a dance between multiple companies, across secure networks, all governed by strict rules. And your job is to understand that dance so you can protect the data moving through it.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you've seen the entire data journey, from the POS terminal to the acquirer to the issuer and back, where do you think the biggest risks are? Is it when the data is sitting on a merchant's server, or when it's flying across the network? Really think about that, because answering that question is the entire reason the PCI security standards exist. Thanks so much for joining this explainer.